Hello, my name is Robbie Fitzwater. I founder of Marketing Rhythm. We help e-commerce businesses grow through better strategy and a lot focus typically on retention marketing and a lot of email. So we get questions about email marketing all the time. And so wanted to kind of take a look at kind of like what email marketing is at a really high level. So we're going to approach this problem at a really high level today, talking about what is email marketing, how do you do it, why is it important for e-commerce businesses, and hopefully have some fun in the process. Okay, so what is email marketing? Email marketing is basically the process of leveraging email as a direct marketing channel to help acquire new customers and keep them coming back in the door. So acquiring new customers and retaining existing customers. It helps businesses build an owned and addressable audience to communicate business offerings, solutions, and establish your brand as a trusted provider in your industry. Specifically for e-commerce businesses, it gives them the opportunity to also communicate with the right person at the right moment with the right message. So allowing a lot of personalization, a lot of unique opportunity for, again, consistent communication, relationship, and growth. So making e-commerce, again, making email a really important channel. Why is it important for e-commerce? There's a lot of different reasons for that, and I'll outline a few of those for us right now. Basically, at high level, email allows us to build a more sustainable and more stable business. Basically, we're not focusing so much of our attention only solely on the acquisition side of things of marketing. We're also focusing on the retention side of marketing. So acquisition, I see a lot of e-commerce retailers get really focused on, again, driving more acquisition. That's always going to be an important component of your marketing, of your digital marketing for an e-commerce business, but it's not the only component. So focusing on acquisition and retention also allows us to really, like, again, build that pie and make that pie bigger for everyone. But also we're not, again, we don't have any acquisition cost when we get somebody to purchase the second, third, and fourth time. So again, from that perspective, it's extremely profitable. And typically as a channel, email is has one of the highest conversion rates of any channel you're going to use, and also has typically the highest ROI. So again, from the cost perspective, it's really profitable and really valuable as a channel. Again, thinking about it in terms of like, hey, how do we build an audience and monetize that audience, which makes it really kind of cool. It's also, again, thinking about kind of how it fits into that whole marketing ecosystem. It's probably our strongest retention channel for our marketing. Email is basically that channel that we're going to lean on more and more to keep people coming back in the door and purchasing over and over as we inform, educate, and empower them through the different stages of their customer journey. In terms of like where it fits into the overall strategy of the business, I always think about, hey, there's 3 ways a business can geometrically grow, and those are, again, going to help us kind of understand what lens we're going to look at email under. So 3 ways you can geometrically grow a business. You can increase the number of customers, you can increase the average order value, or you can increase the lifetime value of each customer. So if you double any one of those 3, you're going to double the value of the business. And numbers 2 and 3, they also come without an acquisition cost. So that profitability component is really there and really valuable. And typically when you can increase the lifetime value of each customer, you're typically ideally moving that average order value up each time. And so email marketing really helps us to push forward that like number, that, again, increasing lifetime value and increasing average order value. Again, I always joke email doesn't get the attention it really deserves in so many ways, because it's not as sexy and exciting as that acquisition side of things, but it typically is going to drive the most consistent reoccurring revenue for you, and also a lot more predictable, stable revenue growth. And again, it's not as sexy, exciting in some ways, but it also, again, gives you a really good foundation. You're also building an owned audience. So you're building your house on owned land as opposed to rented land. So for the majority of my career, I spent a lot of time in social media. So working in social, you're always battling against an algorithm. So again, I always joke like, hey, Facebook made me a better marketer because it was always making me change and evolve and push things forward. But I hated them for it at the same time because, hey, like I miss my audience. I miss getting to have that addressable audience all the time. This is like, so when I started working in e-commerce and specifically in email, my mind was blown because I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing the same thing we were doing on social back in the day, but we're not battling an algorithm, and we're also 3 steps closer to the cash register. So this thing is just printing money, and was really fun and really exciting. But knowing that, hey, we're building and we're building on owned land as opposed to rented land, gives us a lot more stability in our audience and knows that, hey, we can invest in content, we can invest our resource and attention in building those relationships where we're not going to get that, we're not going to lose that relationship when the Instagram algorithm change or Facebook changes something. So it's a lot more stable platform and gives us a really great opportunity to grow. In terms of where this fits into the customer journey, email also allows us to really focus on like optimizing that customer lifecycle. Basically, we get to use this as a way of testing our messaging to understand how we can drive different behaviors at different steps of the customer journey. So I always use the customer journey with kind of a framework of reach, act or activate, convert, and engage. So different stages of that customer journey are really going to help us to understand, hey, how do we reach people at the top of the funnel? How do we get people to, again, understand how our product is going to be useful and valuable to them? How do we get them to convert on knowing, hey, this is the right choice for them? And then how do we get them to engage after that purchase so we can get them coming back in the door? Basically, email and specifically automations give us an opportunity to really understand, hey, what behaviors do we want to drive at each step of that customer journey, and at what levers can we pull to help to nudge them in the right direction. So it gives us a way of making sure that, hey, we can get people onboarded smoothly, converting in that first time, but also we can get people back in the door purchasing a second and third and fourth time. And how do we consistently automate that behavior so we trigger it to be as consistent as possible? It really does allow for a unique opportunity here because we can do this on a consistent basis by automating what we want it to happen, and where a lot of other channels don't have that same level of control. It also allows us to collect valuable first-party data, which is really helpful for us in customization and making sure that we're going to create an authentic relationship that hopefully serves the right person with the right message at the right time. Again, if we know we have different use cases around our product or our services, we can communicate around those different use cases based on needs, based on wants, and based on that individual person and what they're looking for, which makes this really unique because suddenly we can take this great data we have and connect it with messaging that really hits home and positively impacts our audience. Like, again, one client we work with, we ask, what is their horse's birthday? What's their horse's name? And suddenly on their horse's birthday, we can say, hey, we noticed it's Lego's birthday. Wanted to wish them a happy birthday. And like for this horse owner, like this is not just something that's like a surface level touch point. This is going really deep into that relationship where, hey, we've built that trust, we've built that relationship, and hey, they know my horse's name and my horse's birthday. Like that's pretty cool. And so we can kind of connect those dots and have those shock and awe moments where people find a lot of value in it. And then again, from the perspective of a lot of businesses, especially e-commerce businesses, leveraging Shopify and trying to, again, understand, hey, how do I think about email marketing specifically for Shopify? It gives basically those smaller retailers a chance to grow where they're probably never going to outscale or outpace the giant in their space, but this gives them the chance to outhuman them. And where that humanity really comes in and that authenticity and that relationship grows is where they can connect the dots between what they do and how they serve their customers, and really where the small players win and makes it really exciting. How do you do email marketing? Where do you start and what tools do you use? Okay, so this is typically kind of like one of those next step questions we get, but thinking about email marketing is like, hey, there's basically 3 different types of email, and thinking about it at a fundamental level, hey, how do we kind of like break those down and look at those in different ways so you can understand a little bit better? So 3 different types of email. There's triggered emails that are going to be sent based on a behavior. So those are triggered based on, hey, somebody doesn't purchase for 120 days after their first purchase. How do we send them an email to follow up with them? Or somebody starts to check out and leaves. Like, hey, how do we trigger an email or an email sequence to start following up with them afterwards? And how do we, again, make sure that we're like driving those behaviors we want to see based on specific triggers? We also have campaign emails. Those are going to be emails that are sent based on a specific action we want somebody to take at a specific time. So that's sent to a specific segment at a specific time. If we want to sell something, if we want to inform or educate, if we want to roll out a new product, so like a new sales offering, new arrivals, new content, Black Friday, Cyber Monday promotions, those are all going to fit into like that campaign category. And we also have a transactional email category where transactional emails are typically emails that are sent to confirm a transaction. So like when I make a purchase, that confirmation email is a transactional email. That shipping confirmation email is a transactional email. When I try and change my password, that's a transactional email. So all of those things that are validating a transaction, those are going to be the transactional emails. Those are a little bit different too. Those are going to have 100% deliverability because like, hey, it's a transaction of a business, again, transaction happening, and it validates that. So again, those have to hit the inbox every time. So there's structured a little bit differently in your email service provider, or they may be again sending directly through Shopify or your different e-commerce store provider. But basically, whatever is going to be doing that, those transactional emails are just a little bit different component where they fit into a little bit different bucket. We're not going to get into them in super high detail today, but we can probably going to talk about them later too. So from that perspective, we know, hey, we have 3 types of emails we can use and 3 different ways we can use them. So from there, again, how do I get started? How do I do email marketing? And this goes back to a fundamental business like objective of, hey, like what's your story? Who's your audience? And then how do you want to communicate with that audience on a consistent basis? And the consistency is probably the hardest part of that communication. But again, we want to build out a efficient marketing ecosystem, marketing email ecosystem that allows us to do that in a lot of different ways. So we're going to have 3 different components of that, again, e-commerce email ecosystem. We're going to have our, again, audience. We want to be building an audience on a very consistent basis. In terms of that audience, we want to grow our list. We want to grow our list in different ways. We also want to understand who our audience is. So we're going to have different segments and different levels of data we're collecting as we grow that list. Also, as we grow that list, we're going to want to make sure that our deliverability, and as we continue to grow, we want to make sure our deliverability is strong and that we're going to actually hit people's inboxes as opposed to their spam folders. Again, we're not going to dive super into deliverability today. We'll probably touch on that in a few more videos. From there, once we're building our audience, this is where we're going to understand, hey, how do we build our audience so we can communicate with them on a fairly consistent, regular basis? So that's where we're getting into the campaign side of things. So basically, when we get into campaigns, that's when we're getting into, hey, what's our campaign, like, what does our calendar and our cadence need to look like? How do we consistently email our most valuable audiences at the right times so we can communicate things that are going to be valuable to them? What does our design and messaging need to be? How does our voice going to fit with our brand? And how do we kind of extend the personality of the brand into these campaign messages? And then also, what does our content mix need to look and feel like? So we're going to have more promotional messaging, or we're going to have more content-based messaging, and how are those going to fit? Or is it going to be all promotional? Maybe not. Maybe that feels like a used car lot. Or is it going to be all content where it feels a little bit more warm and fuzzy? This is where we need to make those decisions, and how do we kind of like use those two to complement each other to drive more revenue through our email. And then we get into the third area of automations. This is probably one of the places where people spend the least amount of time. People always get like, hey, let's do campaigns. Automations is not necessarily like, it's not looked at as the sexiest area of their e-commerce email ecosystem, but it's one of the most, again, profitable, and one of the areas that offers some of the most consistent growth. I always joke about automations. It's kind of like your 401k or your retirement savings. It's not super sexy to start and kind of get going on, but it's sexy over time, and it again compounds over time, and really is one of the most beneficial areas because, hey, we can suddenly drive revenue in terms of like life cycle triggers and keeping people coming back in the door on a consistent basis. So from the automation side of things, we want to know what our customer life cycle looks like, what their journey looks like, what behaviors we want to see along that journey. And then we want to test those different triggers to see, hey, how can we create and introduce new automations? They're going to drive those behaviors we want to see on a regular basis. And then as we're testing them, how do we improve and optimize those over time so those can drive more and more revenue over time, and gives us a nice, again, each time we introduce a new automation, it levels up the, again, baseline revenue we're going to be making as a business. And then also those automations scale up as we acquire new customers. If our acquisition starts to become more and more effective and efficient, these automations are going to scale up with us. So it's going to grow as a function of the business growth as a whole, which makes this really unique. From there, you want to understand who's your audience, and how are you uniquely positioned to add value to them. So like, again, trying to understand, hey, how do we want to build our audience and who is the right audience to build. So from there, like again, like basically who are our most valuable customers, and how do we want to speak to them in a way that's going to be helpful for them. And once we can understand, hey, who are our most valuable customers, and how do we have the experts on staff, do we have the team members or the perspective on the market to be able to, again, communicate with them and add value in the way that they're looking for it. And then what other pain points may they have along their customer journey that are also going to allow us to serve them in different unique ways. So we want to be able to understand that person, where they spend their time, how they view their emails. Are they spending time on mobile? Are they spending time on desktop? When are they doing it? Are they doing it on their phone late at night? Are they doing it during the day? The better we can understand our audience, the better we can understand our good customers, the more opportunity we're going to have here and the more ways we're going to be able to take advantage of it. From there, what's our story? How do we understand? How do we, again, solidify our story? And then, like, how do we communicate with that value with our audience on a more consistent basis? From here, I like to look at it in kind of like, how do we build some consistency in our system in terms of our campaigns? So how do we build a drumbeat on so we're sending campaigns on a fairly consistent basis? And I always kind of look at how would we use kind of a hygiene hub and hero model, where we can have, again, hub content that we're going to be doing things on a fairly regular basis, hygiene content that we're going to be doing things here and there on a again, kind of a consistent basis. But like, this would be those promotional emails when we're having a sale campaign or sale event. This is something we're not doing every day, but we're doing it, again, on a fairly frequent basis. And then the hero bucket is that, like, Black Friday, Cyber Monday build up, that roll out of a new product that's going to be kind of a staple of our product category, of our product offering. That's where we're really building into this. We're building a pre-order list, we're building a VIP list, and we're really trying to build anticipation and excitement ahead of that rollout. So we have all three of those buckets where we can send, hey, we know we have our hub content that's going out on a consistent basis. Like, that's our newsletter every week. We have our possible promotions at given times. We may have a Black Friday, Cyber Monday promotion once a year. All three of those really help us to think about, hey, how do we frame all of this in a way that's consistent, and we're not reinventing the wheel over and over and over, because when that starts to happen, we start scratching our heads like, wait, what should I send this week? What should I send this week? If you're doing that every single week, you're not going to be effective, and you're not going to be able to plan in the long term. This gives us a way of making that a little bit more sustainable and a little bit more structured, where we're not kind of shooting from the hip all the time. We don't feel like cowboys. So how to get started. And one of the things that I always think about too is like, hey, let's find some other brands or businesses in our category that we can follow and see what they're doing. How do we understand what they're doing and how they're doing it effectively, so we can start to borrow some of those ideas out of the gate and understand where the level of competition in the marketplace is. It may be high, it may be low. We don't even know. We need to kind of find out what it's like. Then also find 5 to 10 businesses in separate industries I look at to identify, hey, what are these opportunities? How can I take advantage of them? And how can I make these ideas my own? I always say, get out of your comfort zone, look at businesses that aren't in your ecosystem or aren't in your space completely. Like, I always look at the women's cosmetic space as probably the most competitive, like, again, category in the marketing industry right now, just because that lifetime value is so high and the margins are so high on those individual products, that like women's cosmetics brands are doing some of those gangster marketing around. So follow what they're doing, follow what Taylor Swift is doing. This is where you can like really pull from great marketing and great businesses in different areas to understand what their secret sauce is, and incorporate it into what you're doing, and how do you understand how to make it your own. Again, that level of understanding is going to help you kind of understand what good looks like and how to do it. The tools you're going to use for this. So again, we're starting off small. The first, hopefully, again, if you're an e-commerce store, you may be using Shopify. Again, Shopify or a WooCommerce or something that integrates smoothly with your email service provider. From the email service provider, a high level of preference towards Klaviyo. Again, if you choose Klaviyo, like, you'll be thanking yourself in terms of like email service providers, because it also allows us to line up SMS along with our email offering. So again, from Klaviyo, we'll be able to send our campaigns, and we'll also be able to send our automations and build those automation systems. We'll also be able to send and automate SMS messages as campaigns and also SMS messages through automations. So it gives us some nice tools to use, and it gives us a really nice, healthy ecosystem where everything's going to directly integrate with Shopify. So we can leverage our Shopify data, customer behavior really consistently and smoothly, and it really gives us a nice platform to build off of. Again, that's at a high level, at kind of like that baseline level. From there, we may incorporate like a just Uno in terms of, hey, how do we grow our list at a faster rate? How do we grow our list in different ways? We may incorporate just Uno as a popover service to start to, again, once we get that person onto our list, how do we collect more data? Or once we have that person on our list, how do we get them onto a VIP list and get more information? Those are going to be ways we can do that. From there, we may be using a stamp.io or a different stamp.io or a Judge Me or a Smile loyalty line, like different loyalty programs that we can incorporate that are also going to integrate with Klaviyo that we can use to leverage in terms of like communicating a loyalty program and driving more loyalty and retention in our customer base. And then if we want to even go farther from there, maybe like an Octane AI where they use customer surveys as ways to understand customers and serve them with the right products, and allows us to collect a lot of data that we can use in a lot of first party data that we can use along that customer journey to, again, serve them the right products at the right time. All of those different services and different tools give us opportunities to kind of grow what we're doing in email, but also grow in different areas of our e-commerce ecosystem. So again, how do we build out a strategy around this? So thinking about this, email should be a subset of your overall marketing strategy, but it should be a large component of it. So think about your overall marketing strategy and how this fits into it. I always think about, hey, when we think about an email strategy, how does this fit into the retention strategy of your business? So when we think about that, how do we understand, hey, who are the people we want to be purchasing on a fairly frequent basis, and how do we want to be driving that, again, consistent revenue early? So in terms of strategy, let's focus on our again, the best segments first. So this is kind of the 80-20 rule where we focus on 20% of our audience. It drives 80% of our revenue. So finding who are those segments and who are our repeat customers that drive the most revenue. We don't want to be like starving our stallions and feeding our ponies in terms of like who we're focusing on. Let's focus on the right audience. And from there, we want to understand, hey, how do we look at this from the audience hierarchy perspective? So this audience hierarchy is basically, hey, not every like subscriber, not every person in our audience is going to be equal. So how do we walk them through those different stages to make them more and more valuable for us, or take somebody from a social follower to an email subscriber, to an engaged email subscriber, then to an engaged email subscriber who's viewed products, to an engaged email subscriber who is a purchaser, then maybe again, one-time purchaser who refers, then maybe a repeat purchaser, and a repeat purchaser who's engaged and refers. The farther we can drive them up that audience hierarchy, the more valuable they're going to be to us, and the more we can kind of like train our audience and kind of like create the customers we want to see. And this is really helpful for us in understanding, hey, how do we drive the most value out of this system? From there, we want to understand what do we sell? Is our product replenishable? In which case we want to get people onto a subscription opportunity pretty quickly, or do we have complementary products that we want to sell in addition to what they already purchased? What's the purchase frequency that we want to be using, and then how large is our product catalog? So do we want to focus on specific categories of our catalog early to focus on the areas of our business that give us the most profitability? So that's where, again, like making those strategic decisions early on with like, who's the right customer to focus on, what do we want to sell the most of, how do we want to grow in there? And that's where, like, once we define those two areas, we can start to understand, hey, how do we understand how to use email to retain more effectively, and then how do we leverage this to acquire and onboard more effectively too. And then also understanding what kind of content we have in terms of what business value we can add. So do we currently have a good baseline of content? And if we do in different areas, how do we incorporate that? I always think about this as, how do we use the whole buffalo in the marketing we're doing? How do we take what we're doing on our blog, incorporate it into email, or take what we're doing on our social channels, incorporate that into email too? So we have some level of insights and content that we can use to add value. And then once we've created that content, how do we automate it too? So once we've sent it as a campaign, how do we leverage it and automate it into our flows and our email automations? And so from there, like, hey, what are the common questions people have? What are the common products they purchase afterwards? When we can start to answer those, we can start to understand what they need at different stages of that customer journey, so we can automate that content in a way that's going to be effectively reach them at the right time and help them again go from one stage to the next. If I'm a coffee roaster, I want to understand, hey, how do I help them understand how to grind their beans differently so they can try coffee in a different category, in a different way. So they're going to experience different flavor profiles uh, if they brew their coffee in an AeroPress versus a pour over. Again, there's a lot of nuance to those different industries, and we want to be able to kind of talk about those and educate and inform those purchasers around those, to hopefully help them again enjoy the product and get the most use out of it. In there, we also want to understand, hey, how do we decide what our promotional mix needs to be? How much are we going to be, again, rolling out new products? Are we going to introduce a new product every week, or is it going to be every quarter? So how does that product introduction lifecycle fit? Also, what is our, again, what is our life cycle for creating value added content? Are we creating content every week, every month? How frequently can we, again, maintain that drumbeat of content? And then also, what does our sales and promotion windows need to look like? I always joke like, hey, your email strategy doesn't need to be like a campaign email the first week that says 10% off, and sales email the second week says 15% off this week, and an email the third week says 20% off this week. That's not a strategy. That's a race to the bottom. Race to the bottom, nobody wins. So thinking about this and strategically, how do we do this on a regular basis? How do we get that cadence right where we're sending, again, valuable emails on a consistent basis? And then how do we know we're going to be sending those to the right segments at the right time? So, hey, our strategy is we're going to be focusing on this customer for this reason and automating messages to help them purchase at these different stages. And then we're also going to be, again, that's our primary audience, and we're going to be reaching other audiences in that process. We're going to be doing that through automations and campaigns. And as we kind of rinse and repeat over time, we're going to be improving the way we do this, and kind of like we can't run before we got to crawl before we can walk, and then we can run. So doing that, starting small and then building up from there, is really, again, a methodical approach to building a consistency into our programs. From there, like we typically get like, hey, like, okay, campaigns, automations, like flows, where do I start? Like there's a lot of those. Where do we start? We always like to start with, hey, let's get like a baseline of what we want that customer journey to look like, and how do we kind of like create a baseline of flows that are going to touch different stages of different journeys, and to help us do different things. So like our welcome series, we want to get people in the door and purchasing that first time. So that welcome series is super important. It's probably should be one of the most, again, revenue positive or highest revenue driving automations in your automation arsenal. But basically, we're walking people through, hey, who we are, how we do what we do, what products we carry, why they'd be a good fit for them, and then as much customization along those lines we can get, the better. From there, our abandoned cart, that's going to be basically if somebody starts to check out, or abandoned checkout. If somebody starts checking out and they abandon it, they leave, they see shipping and it gets them intimidated. This is hopefully bringing them back in. It's different touch points along that journey to hopefully make them feel confident making that decision. Like, hey, we've served like tens of thousands of customers over the years, like making sure that you're not just like some kind of like sketchy drop shipper out of China. This kind of establishes credibility, brings people back in, like makes people feel confident, showing social proof, and then also gets them back in the door to hopefully make that first purchase, or even if they've made a purchase before, make a second purchase. The browse abandon, this is another again, automation triggered based on, hey, they viewed a product, but they didn't add it to their cart and didn't start a checkout. There's also the checkout abandon. It fits kind of in between the browse abandon and the abandon checkout. But these two are like getting these going earlier really makes for a great combination, because those do kind of like capture more, basically kind of both of those behaviors inside of it. So again, the cart abandon, the checkout abandon, the cart abandon, all of those are going to fit into there a little bit differently. From there, the thank you or post purchase. This is where we're like following up with them after purchase, telling the story of the brand, following up with them, like making sure they know like how to use the product best. And really, like, this is where we can ask for like a request to like, hey, let us know what you think about it, share it, like use a tag on Instagram when you're using the product, or reply with a message if you have any questions. This is where we can start that relationship process too, and typically gives us a unique opportunity to kind of like piggyback off that good experience they've had. And then a win back automation just to get people back in the door. If they haven't purchased in a certain window of time, we want to bring them back in the door as fast as we can, but we want to do that in a really strategic way where we're not sacrificing margin and a lot of discounting. We want to pull them back in with different levers, but we can have some fun there to experiment with how we can bring them back into the store. Okay, we're going on down through strategy, what automations we want to use, how are we going to track performance, how are we going to make sure it works. So how do we tie this all back to revenue? I always look at this in 3 layers in terms of that measurement. We have our, again, value-based metrics, performance-based metrics, and engagement-based metrics. Those are all going to be different layers. Value-based is going to be more the organizational level. So like what's your, again, high-level OKRs or KPIs? This is like something that the C-suite can care about and something that basically is going to be like a kind of a North Star for your business in general. So like, hey, how do we increase lifetime value? Like maximizing customer lifetime value is going to be that value-based level. So from there, we have our performance-based metrics. This is going to be more like marketing team level, but is email supporting those performance-based metrics? So maybe that's revenue from returning customers or revenue from repeat purchasers or new subscription purchases or new subscribers in a given window. That gives us an opportunity to say, hey, how is our marketing and our email marketing directly impacting the work we're doing at a marketing team level and then an organizational level? So then we go to that engagement-based or individual-based level, and we can say, hey, how is our email marketing impacting the performance of our team? So that's like revenue from email campaigns or revenue from email automations. And then we can understand at a high level, hey, how we're doing, if we're winning, if we're losing, but we can also connect the dots between what we're doing in email with what we want to do at a high level. So suddenly the C-suite, like they may not care how much our campaigns drive, how much our automations drive, but they're going to care about how much, again, like recurring revenue we may have, or how much we've been able to increase lifetime value of our customers and profitability of our business. That's going to be important to them. So those are all ways of kind of like understanding how we can connect those dots. We can measure this over time where we get like, so as we're introducing new automations, we level up our baseline every month. So if we had like a consistent certain amount of money we can drive through campaigns and we introduce new automations every month, we're just leveling up that base every time and gives us those opportunities to kind of improve and evolve. And then from there, we also have things that are going to be directionally important for us, like, hey, clicks, list signups, revenue per recipient, and then like understanding, hey, what's our goal for each different send, or what's our goals for each different email we send. Those give us a chance to say, hey, we want to get people onto our VIP list. We want people to click on this email and sign up for our VIP list or sign up for a pre-order list. Those are going to be, again, individual campaign-based or email-specific based goals we want people to achieve. And those are going to be, we're going to measure our success on a again, campaign by campaign, automation by automation basis with those, but basically allows us to understand how do we kind of see what we want, how do we drive the behavior we want to see, and were we successful in doing that, and what can we learn from that if not. And basically one of the greatest parts about this is it really does create a nice feedback loop where we learn pretty fast and understanding, hey, we're investing time and resources in doing this, we can really get focused and improve on this quickly. And then especially if you haven't focused on retention efforts in the past, this can be really profitable really quickly, especially once you get 1 or 2 automations going where you're bringing people back in the door if they haven't been, or if you're bringing people back in through campaigns. This can drive revenue really quickly, and so we should see a pretty quick bump. And the one nice part about this too, especially on the e-commerce side, everything we're doing typically is connected with a dollar value. So we're sending a campaign, we're sending an email, we want to see if that's driving revenue. And if we can connect that back to a dollar value, we can have a lot more, again, confidence in the ROI of the work we're doing, because we can connect that with dollars on the other side. And that really helps us to like validate, hey, we're doing well. We should spend more time and attention on this. And like I said, it's typically should be one of your more profitable marketing channels. In closing, I know this was a lot. So again, if you have questions, follow up, let us know. Again, if you couldn't tell, we enjoy talking about this stuff. So closing, getting this going and starting it down this road, don't let perfect get in the way of done. This is where, again, starting and experimenting and testing your toes, like, working to kind of through this is where experimentate really can kind of help. Get started, get comfortable, and then start to evolve. You don't have to go from this like zero to like gangster level marketing right out of the gate. You can evolve and change and improve over time. But basically, this gives us a nice, again, a blank canvas for us to evolve, for us to improve, and for us to raise the bar on the work we're doing all the time. And then basically fold in what we've done in other channels and other campaigns to make sure that we're doing it well. So like, how do we borrow what we're doing on social? How do we borrow what we're doing in other places to incorporate into this? And then how do we rinse and repeat, incorporating like what we learned into what we're doing next? And how do we continually improve this? So once we do, we can really make for some really great marketing and kind of like hopefully some of the more profitable marketing we're doing. So with all that being said, thank you all for the time, and looking forward to seeing you guys around. Bye bye.